Welcome back to Raised by Giants live discussion. Good to see everyone here today. Welcome everyone in the chat, any moderators and or channel members out there. And to anyone that's listening to the replay, thanks for joining in. And also if you're listening to the audio only version, because the show is also a podcast, and you can follow the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, and you can download the audio only episodes on whatever podcast platform you listen to. The show drops on all of those platforms immediately after it's released here. And also, we are a viewer supported show. We don't have any sponsorships, no advertising or affiliate programs. It's just me. So help support the show. PayPal and Buy Me a Coffee links are in the description. And also, you can send in super chats and super stickers. If you would like a question or a comment to be highlighted during the show, channel memberships are also available and are a great way to help support the show monthly. And by becoming a channel member, you can get access to bonus episodes for signing up to be a channel member. And there's a huge back catalog. Click the more button underneath the title of this video to the drop down of the description. All of my links are there, all the ones that you need, including the guest links as well. So with that down, today we have David Dubyne returning from Adapt 2030 channel. Welcome back to the show, Davis. Good to see you.
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm on the road here in Taiwan, earthquake central, man. I have experienced more earthquakes in these last 5-6 days. It's been rumbling here, like, 6.0 and then 5.8, 4.8, 4 point. It's just like lots of quakes. And it's the year of the snake, by the way, for everybody out there keeping track. New Year's Eve tonight for Lunar New Year / Chinese New Year. It's the year of the wood snake. So if you want to take a look at your Nichu Shema, like what year were you born? Which year of the animal were you born in the Chinese zodiac? You can overlay the wood snake with yourself and see what type of animal interaction you're going to get. And I did pull up some stuff for predictions here out of Hong Kong, SPLC, for the crypto market, that sort of thing. It's a snake. So there's going to be a lot of twists and turns this year. That's the whole thing about the year of the snake. Like sometimes like a horse, it just gallops straight with different types of energies, right? So you get, I'm very sure they mapped out the energies of the heavens. So the snake, think about a snake. Like how does it twist and turn and go underground, above ground, in the trees, down on the ground? That's kind of what you can expect for markets, personal relationships, opportunities, high points, low points. The year is going to be not just a single static, like flat energy, like some of the animal signs are in the zodiac, but it's going to be one of twists and turns. So get ready. It's going to be an interesting year.
Isn't it really interesting, David, how if other countries get earthquakes and natural disasters, it's not weather modification or directed energy weapons, but if it happens inside of the United States, it's for sure weather modification and directed energy weapons. Is that not weird?
a lot of the stuff you're seeing, just the natural weather patterns that you would consider quote unquote natural. There is no such thing. Like everyone seems to be manipulated, enhanced for a single reason. Whether it's the typhoons that amplify at the last minute to category 5+ that hit certain regions of the Philippines if they disagree with policies of certain nations. Could be China, could be United States, whatever. But they seem to have this strange typhoon intensification. And then, we've seen movies and predictive programming of this where last minute negotiations in the hurricane will steer offshore or whatever. It's the same thing. I don't know how much, there is natural weather left on the planet, but it seems that they're getting it more wired down to a science to be able to amplify existing systems, not create them, not steer them, amplify them. There's a huge, gigantic Grand Canyon difference between controlling a storm and amplifying a storm.
I would agree with that. And I just think it's really interesting how if, Australia is completely on fire, which I believe that was 2019 or end of 2019. That wasn't a directed energy weapon or weather modification. But if Lahaina is on fire, that is for sure a directed energy weapon that started that fire. Or if LA is on fire, that's for sure a directed energy weapon. There's no other possibility that it could possibly be. It's just really interesting to me. So you're currently in Taiwan and you were recently in Tokyo, and I'm actually headed to Japan this year and I'm really excited about it. I've never been outside of the United States and I've talked to several people that have been to Japan, and they're completely blown away by how sophisticated they are and how it seems like they have fixed a lot of the problems that other countries in the world deal with. Everyone that I've talked to that's been there says that pretty much everything is way more efficient, transportation's more efficient, living arrangements more efficient, cheaper prices on housing, cheaper food prices for the most part, and most importantly, they feel like the government actually cares about them, and that a majority of the companies that people work for are really good to their staff. Like some companies will literally give like newly like maternity leave, like for a new mother, maternity leave for a year with 80% of their pay monthly. And those types of things are the way that it's supposed to be, I believe. I mean, that's common sense, but the US is ridiculously backwards. I mean, just with that example of maternity leave, you're lucky to get off a week in the United States on maternity leave.
It comes down to the homogeneousness of the society. And I know that's like a walking on eggshells, broken glass, and lava topic at the same time in America. But these countries, you need to come out here. These countries that are homogeneous of 98, 99, 97% of a single culture, race, and belief system that are united by that core belief, value, and being of the same bloodline and lineage, there's different rules that apply. Like things can go over to a certain pendulum swing, but it once it starts to upset the society too greatly, it is absolutely removed with the full appreciation and thankfulness of the society to remove the threat that would destabilize the society. But in ours, like you said, okay, so to take the, and also they get their positions back right away. Same pay, they come back. This is Taiwan also, once you have a child, because a lot of these countries are experiencing very low birth rate. So instead of trying to import just non equivalent people into there that don't have the same beliefs, that aren't of the same ethnicity, they would prefer to have their own children and keep the society homogeneous. Where in the States, we're like, oh, who cares? We'll just import somebody else from a different country and whatever. Uh, excuse me, it's there. It's very different. Same in Taiwan. And China, too, is experiencing incredibly low birth rates. So they're actually giving preferential treatment to families to have more children. Like you get a bonus, for example. And it's not like our welfare bonuses where somebody's on their fifth child still filling out checks to get more money from the state. It's they if you have more than one child or two children, you need to get that certain rate hit. So that's the way it is. It's very different. Just try to look into it in a society that does not care about any homogeneousness. The rule of law used to be like the shopkeeper. One thing I realized in Japan, the shopkeepers are very much the street enforcers, and they are allowed to enforce law on the street. That's the next step and stopgap between the police needing to be called out is the local communities policing their own local communities. And there's none of this like, oh, you can't beat that person. They're from a different country. Oh, you can't hog tie that person because they were going to destroy a building or cause damage. Oh, you violated their rights. Oh, they're different color. Oh, you didn't. Yeah, yeah. Nothing like this. Somebody's in there to cause nefarious actions. Anybody in the neighborhood can take them down. And especially the street theft stuff, the shopkeepers are allowed to actually whoop the tar out of them and then call the police. Like it's very much a local, it's the opposite of what we have. We have way too big government in America trying to micromanage everything down at the street level. And that between that and the street level, just there's a huge vacuum that occurs. Crime's rampant. You can't do anything about it. There's so many states. If you try to stop a thief, you're the one who will go to jail for stopping them. But excuse me, here in Asia, it's the opposite. It's like the street level going back up. If you're going to talk about the pyramid of control, you're allowed to enforce your own street laws here and keep that place safe. You talked about Japan. It is so safe to walk anywhere at any time of the night. Same in Taiwan. I never felt threatened even once anywhere. China, the same. Thailand, a little different because it just operates different. There's millions and millions and millions of tourists, and people are all, tweaking and getting drunk all the time, and just really just like partying too much down there. So it's a little bit different. But like Malaysia is another one. You don't mess around in Malaysia. Singapore, you don't mess around there too. Like there's very strict sets of rules where this is why a lot of these cultures have stayed together, remain powerhouses, aren't fracturing. And the only problem they're having is not having enough children. So when you swing it back again, like there's things that are allowed to change in the society as, society moves forward with technology and stuff. But there are very hard, fast rules that have always been and always will be. And those never change. And that wiggle room in the middle is what we call our modern era. But I really like the way that they are allowed to stop the threat of something that is going to destabilize their country or their neighborhoods or their cities or their culture without being admonished or arrested or thrown under the bus for being this, that, or the other label that we've given everybody for stopping crime. I give them high praise for that, because you're a Western tourist and you come and try to mess around and be like, oh, I'm from America. I can do what I want in your little country. No, you can't. You're going to get put in your place so fast when you wake up in that jail cell, and you're going to call your embassy to get you out because you tried to like take something off a street vendor and run, and they all cornered you and whooped you to death almost. Then you're going to realize that the same rules don't apply overseas. There's a whole different world out here. And once you start exploring it, you start to realize how defunct and broken and near third world status the United States is. And I don't mean to be demeaning, but I'm just looking at it as like, okay, the sky is blue. America's a borderline broken down third world nation compared to a lot of these others out here that are running full steam and aren't even looking back. And and our banking system, I'll go into some stuff later, but I rambled a little too long there. Go ahead.
No, it's just interesting. I mean, just with transportation, because from my understanding, again, I've never been there. I don't know how everything operates, but I'm planning on going there this year. But just with transportation, it seems way more efficient. Like bullet trains there, they get you to where you need to be like really quickly. And it blows my mind that the United States hasn't implemented anything like this. Like we're still just driving around in cars when a lot of people in Japan use public transportation. I don't even think that, again, I'm not 100% sure because I haven't been there. I don't think very many people in Japan, like the common everyday person, has a vehicle because they don't need a vehicle.
That's true. And the trains run down to the minute on the schedule. If your train says it'll be at 7:20 in the morning and you rock in at 7:23, your train's already gone. Like you have to wait for the next one. And a lot of them are seated trains, right? So you have to, if you don't have a seat, then you have to go back to the station, turn in your ticket, get a new seat allocation if they have or whatnot. And I'll tell you one thing. So being in Taipei, they have, I think, about 15 different underground, or what you call, subway lines. Up in Japan and Tokyo, there's 200. I mean, the vastness of the network is so mind-boggling. When I looked at that, you have got to be, that is a fraction of a little square on the bottom, what would be just the Taipei system, which is one of the most advanced in Asia, the widest reaching, and that is just a fraction of what Tokyo is. And you talk about getting people somewhere efficiently, and I'll agree with you, not a lot of people have cars. It's really expensive. So, for example, here, this is in Taiwan, not Japan. A friend of mine bought a house down near the University District, down near Taipei University in Taipei, and or Taiwan University, excuse me. And the parking space alone, to buy the parking space in the parking car, they already bought the apartment above, but to buy the parking space associated with that apartment above cost $97,000 for the parking space. Put that in perspective for a second. And if you don't, then you're spending $30, $40, $90, $100 a day to park your car outside. So And then people rent these parking spaces out. It's an investment. So people go around like you, just as you and I, we might buy a property and then want to flip it property. Well, here in Asia, buying parking spaces and just holding on to them until a district becomes much more popular and then selling that or renting that parking space is a big business here. I mean, you're spending upwards of 100 grand literally in the size where you can park a car. And then they have the automated ones that are multi-story tall underground. You pull your car in and then it drops on a conveyor belt. And then it's slotted off somewhere, and then AI pulls it back in when you put your number back in. Ooh, here comes your car again. It's really intriguing to see what they've done with the lack of space. Like in America, we almost have unlimited space. So everything just keeps going out and out and out. Well, a lot of these places, you can't go anymore out. It's an island, or there's, some sort of border to another country, and then it kind of stops. So you're going to have your mind blown when you come out. It's absolutely going to shift your full waking reality when you have a chance to see what it's like outside the States versus what our brainwashing machine has told us. America, number one, number one. When you come out here, you're going to see America maybe like, definitely not number one, way down the list somewhere in there. And especially with the inflation and all these other things too, you're going to start to see that what we've been told and fed at home is definitely not the way it really is.
Which is so interesting. I think some people are really getting an idea about China because of the TikTok ban. They ended up downloading this app called Red Note, which is 100% controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. But
that's super popular here too. That is massively popular here.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people got a wake up call of like how much we were kind of lied to about China and this idea of what we think China is about whenever they got in there and seen nothing but Chinese people uploading and figuring out a bunch of different things. And I was like, oh wow, this is kind of like a cultural shock as well.
It's all different. I mean, most Americans are homogeneous across. You go to, let's say, Myrtle Beach, that just got an enormous amount of record snow, or you go to Charleston, South Carolina, record snow. You go to any strip mall, mini mall, it's going to be almost exactly the same as you get out to California. Like the homogeneousness of our country too, in terms of business. But then when you come out here, and I will say a lot of the mom and pop shops got wiped out during COVID, but prior to that, everything was pretty much small businesses that made it run. Yeah, you had a couple Costco's and you had a few other things, but I would say it was upwards well over 80% of small business owners that allowed the country to function with the things you needed to buy on the daily life times of things. Not so much furniture, but anything else, anything for the house, anything for food, cleaning supply, anything that you think that would be sort of a daily use thing. It was predominantly supplied by mom and pop businesses. Now, since walking around in Japan as well and here in Taiwan, a lot of those businesses are out of business. It was just travesty the way our world got that wealth transfer happening under the guise of something else during that time, like closing all the small businesses, but allowing the bigs to stay open. Like Costco, for example, the local supermarket where I was living in Knoxville, small ethnic supermarket, they had all kind of things from, Southeast Asia, Indian subcontinent, Africa. They had all kind of crazy good stuff. Europe, they had this Spanish, and then they also had the Moroccan olive oil. It was one of the only places you could get Moroccan olive oil, and that place had to close. But then the supermarket, the IGA and that sort of thing, and Costco right across the street and Sam's down the road, they were allowed to stay open. And that supermarket never came back. That was one of my favorites because you could get like some crazy good spices in there. Closed forever. They're never coming back. So just to see like how the economy is spinning differently too. You talk about the BRICS. Our country's going into hyperinflation. Out here, the reason we're doing this program today is I sent Ryder a message when I was in Japan. The food in restaurants to go out to eat is cheaper in Japan than it is to eat out in America. And the quality of food is just far higher quality. And that was the second time I've been shaken awake by that. And I found Italy last year, it was cheaper to go eat out in a restaurant with higher quality, what you consider Italian foods, than it was to eat in just some regular burger joint in America to go out. Shocking. So what you think your prices are in America, yeah, we're getting hyperinflation. As soon as you step out, your dollar buys way more outside than what it does in the States.
Yeah, that's what I've heard as well is, I mean, compared to the American dollar, but I'm not 100% sure if the amount of money that they make in Japan equals out to the exact same amount of inflation that they would be getting there, or you know what I mean? So I don't
I
know
don't have
if,
that answer. I know exactly what you mean, but I don't have that answer.
yeah. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure on that because normally when you're getting paid a certain amount, it would probably still be highly inflated for them because they're getting a certain amount, just like it's highly inflated for us because minimum wage has stayed the same almost throughout everywhere. So
Yeah,
I don't really
that's
know.
true. Yeah, the inflation is gripping the planet. Don't get me wrong. But it just seems that with the exchange rate that we have, and I get it, a lot of it is tied to exchange rate, but a lot of it's just tied to direct inflation. And it seems the same phenomenon's happening. I can't find very many countries where the wages are outpacing the inflation. I just don't see it. It seems the opposite is true in almost every single country. But with that said, how is it that you can go to some of what were considered the most expensive places in the world and still have that be cheaper to eat out in a restaurant than it would be to eat in just give me a common like restaurant chain, not like a McDonald's or anything, but uh, give me a restaurant chain that might be in the States that's just sort of like hamburgers, like Five Guys or something,
Chick-fil-A,
or
Chick-fil-A.
yeah, just something like that. What you would spend at
Yeah.
Chick-fil-A or what you would get at like I'm trying to think of some other one, the Olive Garden, maybe something like
Mm.
that. You're eating like proper Italian food, having a full bottle of wine and all kind of thing for the same price that you were getting for just your regular bargain meal or a nighttime special. Because it's really difficult to find. Like for me, where I live in a small town, there's got a couple of restaurants along the river. And when I first moved to that place, you could get in there and get a hamburger for like $8, big, huge thing of fries, have a couple beers with that, and you walked out for under $20, right? Now you can't even touch that same hamburger. It's like $14, $13.99 for that same hamburger. And that's just in a regular, sit down kind of fun restaurant. It's right on the river, or I should say, big like that. Uh, but just even that, and that is considered not so expensive compared to going out some places in like Nashville, for example. That is way more expensive than eating out in a restaurant in Japan or a restaurant in Italy. That's what I'm getting at is even with like a regular nice burger place or, steak slash salad serving place is way cheaper by 20 to 30% easily to eat out in other nations versus our own. So what's going on with the inflation at home here?
Are the portions are a lot smaller though, right?
I'm finding that not really. We have gone through the shrinkflation thing to try to battle with the inflation first by shrinking our portion sizes. And anybody who goes out to eat will absolutely know what I'm talking about. Especially, I'll bring you back to that same example when I first moved down to the small town. Like when you got an order of fries next to a burger, it covered a good majority of the plate. It's like a stack of fries. Now it's just like a few of them dribbled on the side. So, what do you think? I mean, you've eaten out. I would ask everybody out there listening, do you think the portion sizes that you're getting when you eat out, do you think it's smaller than it was 5 years ago? Or do you think you're getting the same amount of massive American portions? I don't think so. Everybody did shrinkflation first to try to disguise the price rises before they couldn't, brush that under the rug anymore by shrinking the size. Well, they finally actually had to raise the price of the base ingredient, like the beef patties or the whatever it would be.
I mean, like in Japan, the portion sizes whenever you or other countries, I don't think, again, haven't been there, but from what I've heard, is that they are smaller in portions than the portions that we get if we go out to a restaurant here. They're much larger here than they are in other countries like Japan and like Taiwan.
I would have agreed with you 5 years ago. Absolutely smashingly different sizes. But after all the restaurants had to compensate for the rising prices, they keep shrinking the size of what you consider an American meal plate size. That has gotten smaller and smaller and smaller to where it is nearly equivalent of what you're getting out in other nations now. That's the whole thing. That balance reoccurred before. I'll agree. You had something stacked to the Himalaya on the plates for American portions, but now that's been knocked down to what you consider regular size. They're really cutting down into the food wastage in the restaurants now. So I'm going to say maybe 10% more size on the. But when you walk away out of a restaurant, you're still full. It's not like you walk out, like some French restaurant where they gave you something that's like the size of a thimble for your main dish, where you got to eat a bunch of those. But beyond that, I think it's very close, pretty close.
Interesting. See, I'm kind of scared to go to Japan because I'm super tall.
Oh man, you're going to be so stoked there.
I'm 6'5", and I'm afraid that
oh, you'll get
I'm
through.
gonna
Just
be
watch
like
your head.
a
I'm 6'4".
golden
I'm
god.
always very leery of my head when I go through things. When you're going through doorways.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to
You'll
duck
smash your head a
down.
few times before you get it. Believe me. I'll leave like on the floor, almost cowering, like, "Ugh, did I just break my brain?"
Yeah, I've heard some of the shops are kind of tiny. And some of the living quarters are really tiny. Where did you stay whenever you were there? Was it like an Airbnb or like something equivalent to an Airbnb or a hotel, or what did you stay in?
Oh, when we were in Tokyo, we found a nice hotel. I mean, you got to realize rooms are real small there. So, I mean, it was good for the price for what it was. And then we went up near Mount Fuji and we stayed up in these cabins up there. Those were Airbnb rentals, but it was like 10 or 12 of them that were under management from some company. And then they were all just cabins, but they're all Airbnb cabins that we were able to get. We got one of those. And it was enough there was 4 of us traveling together. So 2 rooms in there. And they had outdoor sauna hot tub overlooking the thing, all fed by this well, obviously it's volcanic waters. So like water's kind of unlimited and free and piping hot coming out of the sides of the mountains there. And they just run it through their pumps and bring it up. But yeah, room sizes are incredibly small. That's one thing with space, right? So in places like Tokyo, the rooms are small. The further you get away from that, down into like Southeast Asia or here to Taiwan, then things kind of open up where you get more space. But you got to realize Tokyo is one of the most squeezed places on the planet. Those B capsule hotels, you might want to stay in one just for an experience. And I think they're about 35 or $40 now. The price really went up on those capsule hotels. So they used to be almost nothing, like 10 or $20, because people used to make fun of them. And it was like only backpackers would ever stay in them. But now they become more luxury. They become like luxury B hotels where they have all the same amenities that you would have in like some of these more boutique hotels, but they squeeze them into the little beehive and then they charge you a lot more because you got body wash in there now.
I want to go to these UFO hotels. Have you heard about these? I think they're abandoned now, but because they didn't go over and they didn't get to build them all. But I believe this is in Japan. Yes, yeah, Tokyo Fox. Yeah,
Yeah, it could be. But see, when you come over here in Japan's like really jumping in the deep end because not a lot of people speak English once you get outside Tokyo. So you're going to have to use a translation app because, a lot of other countries do speak much more English across Asia than Japan. And once you get outside the city, like a big city, yeah, you're going to definitely have to have some sort of translator with you app to get around, and you'll just have to really learn how to use that thing on the fly and function with it because to be able to even translate where your train is, and like they don't flip back into English a lot of times unless you're in Tokyo or something. If you're out at a small station, oh wait, yeah, it was on the main line though. Going back to Tokyo, they did flip into English, but when we got onto some like these spur lines going way out there, no, it was just like the local. So you're gonna have to, it's a good experience too.
I want some of
And
that UFO
those
ramen,
ramen noodle
bro.
things, I think, are about $2 now for one of those ramen
Heck
little
yeah,
takeaway.
UFO ramen, dude. Get abducted
Yeah,
by
I
the
think they're like a
ramen.
$1.50 or $2 for that. I don't eat that kind of stuff. So, but I do remember seeing it all over the supermarkets.
I
You
would
get
get
like a
it
whole
just
aisle of just like instant noodle stuff.
yeah. UFO ramen, baby. I want some of that.
Yeah, I get that. As speaking of the tech, I'm wondering with all this disclosure, I think you and I touched on this last time. Are they going to bring out this, antigravitics technology and zero point and parent magnetic motor technologies? Because, looking at the minerals that are still needing to be mined from now to 2030, even now to 2035, we have to double the copper supply of all the copper that's ever been mined on the planet in the last 4,000 years. That amount needs to be mined and refined in the next 10 years for all these green agendas to go forward. And that's just real simple copper. But then when you get in all these rare earth minerals, like lithium, for example, so far we've mined 1.2 million tons. They need to bring that up to 1.5 million tons over the next year. That's just not happening. So I think that we've been bait and switched green deal because Trump's pulling us out of the climate accords. And I am wondering if all this was just a wealth transfer as well, that it was a scripted play to bring us to this point, knowing that we would literally drop off a cliff, knowing there wouldn't be enough metals. And suddenly the disclosure happens at the exact same time to bring us into a completely different system that will relegate all those to the dustbins of history. Because I just did a video on Storm Ewan that ran over Ireland and the UK off the west side. They had to close down all their wind off there, and the gas-fired power plants needed to turn back on. And that move alone cost every person on the line that was there cost them 48 pounds extra because they got hit with a carbon tax because of the gas-fired generation. And I did not know the contractual agreements with the UK is the wind farm operators get paid when they turn off their wind generation, because they don't want to damage the blades in high wind because it overload the grid. Like if they were to leave it on, possibility of damage, yes, but possibility in a lot of the peripheral areas would be screaming at like 50, 60 mile an hour winds and it wouldn't get to the hurricane range. That all those in unison spinning at max capacity would overload the grid with input. So they have to turn that off because they don't have any load smoothing, or there's a particular name for it. I forgot I did that yesterday. Brain fart, but there's some kind of smoothing load mechanism balancing. Well, there's too much energy produced from the windmills. They need to turn it off. So then every time they do this maneuver, this Rubik's Cube of, we got to turn all the wind production off along the West Coast. They need to fire up the gas, but all that there's a like a fee for the wind companies because it's like a nuisance fee for them to have to turn it off. They get paid a certain fee by the government. Having no production, they get paid the equivalent of what they would have produced, even though they're not producing. And then the consumer gets hit with a carbon tax because they're using natural gas. So the consumer gets hit with 3 different charges every time, excuse me, they come into a large wind event where they need to shutter all wind operations. So this kind of green scam is at the end of its days. And I can see why everybody's pushing so like ferociously now, because I think this is the last time that they're going to have to either launder the money or to like make prices rise in stocks or whatever green end of things are before it collapses. I think they've run their course and it's meant to have a certain expiration date on it. And I think that expiration date overlaps with disclosure into what you consider electrogravitics and magnetic motors, meaning we don't have to burn anything again.
Yeah, I have a really interesting theory on the reason for them not releasing the free energy in the craft to the public. I don't know if I want to get into it because it's pretty much, it's
Oh,
really
can you give me
far
the
out
Cliff
there.
Note version? Can you use the Notebook LM
No,
version?
no, because it would take more explaining than that. Because if I did, then people would just be like, "Oh, that's stupid. You're so stupid." But uh, when it comes to like aliens and stuff, because free energy has kind of been tied with extraterrestrials and aliens in this community for a really long time. People have been, talking about this alien invasion stuff. And, you've been outside of the country a lot. You're currently in Taiwan. You were just in Japan. And if you go into a country that you're not a citizen of, you're considered an alien, right? You would technically be an alien. You're not from that country. And when you break down the word extraterrestrial, it just means extra land, extra terra. Terra is a Latin word for earth. So extra terra, extraterrestrial, just means extra land on earth. And we have aliens invading from 2020 to 2024. Then you have Trump coming in and deporting them back to their extra land, extraterrestrials, aliens, back to their extra land. He's defeated the aliens. And that's the way that I think a lot of the stuff works, Dave. It's all wordplay, it's word magic. They tell you one thing when they mean something completely different. And that's what I 100% believe is going on. And because that's the way that people talk about the alien invasion, right? That the aliens are going to come and invade, and then we're going to push them back, and then we're going to reveal the technology. Well, that seems to be sort of exactly like what's happening right now at this very moment. I mean, there's been several people that's been talking about that free energy is getting ready to be released, which I really don't know. I have no idea. People have been saying that for a really long time. I hope it's true. I hope that we do it. I hope that we actually have the technology, which on all accounts, we definitely have anti-gravity technology. I 100% believe that 95% of the things that we see in the sky is our own technology. So, but that's what I think is going on. So Trump comes in, deports the aliens back to their extra land, their extraterrestrials, and then they start rolling out the free energy devices.
I got two comments on that. But yeah, they would have to at the end move to a new energy system, because what they have given us, first of all, the promises of you install the windmills, you install the solar panels, energy is going to be almost limitless and free. The opposite's occurred. A lot of places, energy prices have risen, doubling or tripling because of the install, because of non-reliability of it. So that was a bait and switch. Now, the ultimate bait and switch is the entire agenda for switching will be done by 2030. But when you look at the mining that needs to occur, they have to open almost 300 new rare earth mines in the next couple of years, like 2 to 3 years, to even start to hit some of those goals and targets. Now, this is coming to light where people are like, we are never in the history of mankind ever going to mine all the minerals required to reach these grandiose goals. Maybe if we have some new technology, it's possible, but today's current standard of mining and the way operation is done, it literally can't be facilitated in the next 1,000 years. Like some of these projections of how long it would take to get some of these rare earth minerals at today's mining capacity out, we're looking at least a century or 2 centuries. So for them with straight face to come and say 2030, even I'll even say 2040, there's still 0% possibility that we're going to remotely reach any of these goals. Now, at some point, people are just going to start laughing it off and go, that's BS. We're never going to reach that. Why do you keep talking about that? We're at that rollover point now. And with Trump pulling us out of the climate accords and moving over to free speech, now they're allowing a lot more people to talk about it. And I think this is the catalyst that they're going to allow the average person to chat away to bring to light this giant scam that's in front of us about how much metal we need. And then at some point, they're like, okay, well, we can't ever do it. So we're going to have to move to, there's this new energy system that just popped out, which would bring me back to Admiral Byrd. And, you talked about extra land. I've read many accounts of sailors sailing like 60,000 miles around the ice wall and never come to the end of it. Now, you might think that, okay, well, that's 60,000 miles was just the entire circumference of Antarctica, and they never came, and they came back to the same place, and they were confused because they thought it was ice because it's all vertical ice on the wall, and they were in the same place, and they didn't know because they were so dumb back then that some of these excuses of art, these guys were far more superior at understanding where they were than we are with GPS. I mean, if you take a sailor from the 1850s to a modern sailor for navigation, I would stay with the guy in the 1850s any day of the week because they know exactly where they are using stars and also following where the sun is, where the moon are. They were navigator masters, and also taking the clues from wildlife, how close they were into places. It's a tight run between GPS, and if you didn't know how to navigate and you lost your GPS, well, you're just SOL. So I'll stay with the guy from 1850, and they were chasing whales all over the place. So they kept saying that they were running into this ice wall that never ended, never ended, never ended. Okay. And then you can stumble across some more ancient maps from, say, the 1500s, 1600s that show that exact ice wall, but on the outside of it, there's more different lands, plural. And not that it's another planet, it's just our planet is larger than it is, at least for us to allow to exist to visit the Terra. We are limited inside this ice wall. And I know it sounds kind of weird and a little woo-woo on whatever day this is, but and I want to bang some flat earthers down too. If our planet was much, much larger than it is shown or mathematically proposed to us, if our planet was 5-10 times larger and we're only existing on a small portion of it, and almost like zoo animals trapped into our little cage or our zone, then if the planet was much larger, like I'm sure, very sure, if you go to Jupiter, you will not see curvature on Jupiter because it is such a large planet. So if you take that into consideration, it's not flat. It's probably much larger than we are being told. And even if you go to a certain height, it'll still appear flat, because you go to that same height on Jupiter, my friends, it is going to be flat. You go to the same height on Saturn, it is going to be flat. You go onto the sun, it is going to appear flat. The curvature, you're going to have to go much higher in the sky. You'll have to go, what, 300-400 miles up at least to see any kind of curvature, maybe 500. But what we do with like rockets, sounding rockets, balloons and things, if the planet is larger than we are told, you will never see curvature on it. And then that blows the whole. So there's your whole flat earth thing. It doesn't, it's about the size of perspective. So think about the mind psyop that's created and stopped us from traveling. Why is it we can never go to Antarctica? Like if you do an overlay and you put United States inside Antarctica, you can put like 3.5 USAs inside Antarctica plus.
It's huge.
And it's a barren ice planet pretty much down there. So why would they be worried about me or you just going down and taking our own vessels and jumping off on the ice that's just barren ice for thousands of miles? Why are they so afraid of that? Because very few people would take the journey to get down there. It'd be in the thousands or hundreds of thousands. But why can't we do that? If we're not going to damage anything because it's all ice and the ice is going to come back every year, why would anybody care if you're down there? Something much different is going on. Perhaps there's an entrance at middle of summer where the ice is melted enough where you could squeak through and get to that outer section.
Well, I'm so glad that you brought this up, Dave. I'm over here shaking my head, yes, because I'm glad you explained it, because that's a part of my woo-woo theory. And I think that is a big reason why they don't want people to have free energy, because that would be the only way that you could get to this extra land is with an anti-gravity craft, because you can't get there by boat because of the ice. Well, it's just a coincidence that the furthest north that you can go is barren and cold, and the furthest south that you can go is barren and cold, and east and west is nothing but ocean, so you can't fly, right? So the easiest way to get there would be something that did not have fuel to it. So I think that is number one reason, and they've created all these other offshoot reasons to the reason why they didn't release the technology. Like, oh, well, people will be upset because we could have been using this for a really long time, which is true. The other one is, oh, well, it's going to collapse all these other industries, which is also true. It's another reason. But I think the number one reason is because they don't want people to know that there is extra land outside of this area that we're enclosed in. And if we had free energy and everyone had this ability to go there, then that's going to blow the lid on this entire thing, because that would mean that they've been lying about all this for hundreds and hundreds of years. And people already think that. People already think that the space photos are faked, and that when NASA has a telescope, they're faking the shape of the. It's all kind of wrapped up into that, but they're getting the point of it wrong. It's not that we're on a flat Earth; it's that we're on a very enclosed space on Earth, and there's other things that exist outside of the area that we know about. But when it comes to Antarctica, I have this book on Antarctica right down here. I would grab it if I had enough time, but it's behind some things. And there's a chapter in there. Whenever Admiral Byrd went to Antarctica, what they discovered was that around the, I might be misquoted here, but the gist of it is right. So around the center of Antarctica is this very luscious area. Greenery is there. It's green. There's a lake. It's warm. And they were all shocked by this whenever they went there. They're like, what is going on here? Why is there this lush part of Antarctica that is all has greenery and like all this stuff there? And that really surprised me. And I found it at a thrift store, and I was like, holy crap, I can't believe they put this in this book on Antarctica. And I picked it up, and I was like, holy shit. Like, that would be a huge discovery, right? In the middle of this continent that is just full of ice for thousands of miles, there's this gigantic patch of land that has greenery that is like a forest. It's a freaking forest in the center of Antarctica. And then when you think, oh, well, why is no one allowed to fly over Antarctica? Well, that could be the reason, is because there's this luscious freaking forest in the middle of Antarctica.
Yeah, that would be a microclimate generated by a crustal breakthrough that would allow heat to come up from the crust that would, be overwhelming of the weather systems around it. That there must be some positive pressure from beneath that continually is pushing out this warm air that actually overwhelms what you consider Antarctic weather systems to allow that to keep that microclimate in there. It seems like it's a bowl valley then the way you're describing it, where it would come out. And I've heard something too about this where they were flying over and they'd seen some, large trees growing on the sides of mountains that didn't make sense to it. And they said they spotted a woolly mammoth, and they thought it was a woolly mammoth, and that was unconfirmed. And they thought they saw some animals and thing. But, it goes into a lot of stories then of, for me, then Elysium is nothing more than documentary for us. Because the way Elysium is, if nobody's seen the movie, we have this Earth where we're stuck on this. And as soon as you get out onto the rotating platforms above, it's a completely different world, like literally a completely different world. Billionaire mansions, no crime, all kind of med beds and things that are so highly advanced, 100 years technology advanced from what is even down on the planet in a futuristic sense. So think about if you jumped over the ice wall and you came into these areas that no like regular humans were allowed in, and you started to find that. I mean, then what? Because I've seen some of these older maps, and I'm telling you, these guys in the 14, 15, 1600s, the cartographers of the time, I don't know if you knew this, punishable by death. That was executable offense if you forged topography on your maps. Like those guys were, if you think about top secret security clearances, that's what those guys had, plus to be cartographers, to then report back to the kings, queens, the royalty of the day. Like that's what the level of respect and understanding of your code of ethic was, at least at that top security clearance level, for you to be a cartographer. And if you breached that and you put in fictitious data and you came back and created lands or created something out of nothing, that was punishable by death. So put that in perspective for a second. You think these guys are going to be lying about land masses that are on, that they returned these maps to the kings and they're allowed to keep part of the treasure in different lands that were discovered? Nutmeg in itself, that whole thing about trying to find the Nutmeg Islands over in Indonesia. I mean, it goes so many levels deep of where the original resources were in these, carefully guarded maps. I mean, when you knew where those 5 islands that produced nutmeg were in Indonesia, whoever had that literally had the golden key to vast wealth. I was watching a documentary a little while ago And they were saying the equivalent value of trade coming out of that spice area of just the Nutmeg Islands during the 1700s was equivalent to 1 trillion US dollars of our current wealth, in addition to the cinnamons and these others, right? But the nutmeg itself. And I was thinking, holy smokes, that's insane. That much money was just encapsulated within 5 islands. So the sailors that were, bequeathed to the king of just these secret maps that could show where these rich islands were with the spices, because nobody knew where these spice islands were, literally. And then they showed the maps coming out of Java and how to get there. And these things literally were top secret maps given to the king, and they had their own private sailing fleets with their military escorts. That's the level that these cartographers were working at. And for them to be showing land masses outside the ice ring, you got to give some validity to it. You got to leave. And okay, excuse me, if it would have been one map, okay, maybe it's a one-off. But there are dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, of these maps from different eras. Like I say, middle 1400s all the way to, let's say, early 1700s, and then whoosh, it all just disappears. A lot of these older maps that you can find on rare map sites, you can just go through catalog after catalog after catalog of these things. You just find these anomalies, especially in the North Pole, where they show 4 land masses up there. And if it's not that one famous that it's almost, 4 square pie pieces up there with the rivers going into the center, there's multiple other maps that show different land masses. At the very North Pole right now, all we see is water. And I encourage you to go to nullschool.net and go all the way up to the North Pole. And there's a wind pattern that wraps around something, seemingly a mountain, right at the North Pole. And you can check it again and again. It always has this like wind anomaly right at the North Pole that will wrap around something that's up there. And it definitely looks like it's a mountain, the way it bends around a mountain. It definitely has a wind pattern that's similar to that.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the passage in this book. It's somewhere in this Operation High Jump with Admiral Byrd, but this is the book, Reader's Digest, Antarctica. I'll find it later on and I'll bring it back up. But
There's some nuggets to be found in these old bookstores. Like, people don't know that information's not supposed to be seen.
and it was like a quick little paragraph too. It was like a quick little paragraph. Like Admiral Byrd in his the people that went with him found this luscious part of Antarctica that was, I forget how big they said it was, but it had a lake and it was all like foresty and green and everything. But let's get into some of the predictions before we roll out of here this evening. You said that this is the year of the snake. There's going to be a lot of ups and downs. What do you think that we can expect for the rest of, well, we're in the beginning of 2025. What do you think we can expect for the rest of 2025?
All right, let me open this one up. This is a Hong Kong prediction here. And they're pretty good. They were on it like Blue Bonnet last year. The only thing they got wrong was Ethereum, that only rose 35% last year. Everything else, they were on the money pretty much. And this is the second year in a row they've been pretty successful. So a lot of people follow what they say. Okay, so this, if you want to follow, this is CoinDesk picked up the Hong Kong predictions. So I'll read it just verbatim here for you. The year begins with cautious optimism as liquidity-driven modest gains mirror the rough green snake climbing into trees and bamboo for a vantage point. Okay, so it's cautiously going up, down. However, youthful volatility akin to the garter snake testing its limits brings temporary falls in early spring, meaning they got out onto a too spindly of a branch because they were young, and whoosh, they fell down, but didn't kill them, and then they're back on their journey again, trying to get higher in the tree. By mid-year, so this seems summer, the fiery energy of the brown tree snake suggests a potential surge, lifting markets to heights not seen. Okay. And then at the end of the summer, they're talking coming into autumn, stagnates. According to the stars, autumn brings minor setbacks, but the years end with renewed momentum and a steady rise, highlighting crypto's resilience and adaptability in a volatile market. Okay, take it for what it's worth. Overall, we're definitely going to have some strangeness, I would believe. Because look, look at what's happening anyway. I mean, China comes out with their new AI software and it tanks the markets across the world. Like Nvidia fell 18% yesterday. So China comes out with their basic model that rivals ChatGPT, and it turns out that it's something like 30 times less cost to run this model, to train it up. Equally as good as ChatGPT and slightly faster as well. So that rattled the market because we had supposedly cut them off from all the semiconductor chips. And then just today they released a new model. This is all, open source, so it's free for everybody. The Pro version. So some companies right now are charging $200 a month for enterprise editions of this. China just released the Pro version, enterprise edition, for free. So almost everybody who was anticipating earnings because they're charging you to use ChatGPT for $8 a month, their company's $200 a month, that just went pretty much to zero. So markets are trying to deal with this, where imagine if, at the height of iPhone a couple of years back, that suddenly somewhere in China, they come out with an iPhone that is 30 times less cost than the iPhone and double the capacity and double the features and running much faster with the operating system, and it costs you $35. Like literally something that blows the iPhone away into that is just now a paperweight because it's so useless compared to the tech of this, and is offered for $35. Like everything else associated with that system's downstream is all gone until they catch up on. This is what's happening again. I would, things keep, crypto's bouncing back a bit, but telling you, the whole markets are just.
Well, not only that, we also have the Stargate project.
Yeah, right. Well, that's all wasted money now, because what China did is just pretty much took that down to zero. They're talking about all this innovation and investment and thing. Well, China just did something 30 times cheaper and at least 1.5 times faster on a training model. So why would you ever invest or use any money to try to go with these guys when something already superior has been built and released for free to the public as a gift to humanity, open source? Like, it blew everybody's model out. That's why the markets are collapsing. Like, this is pretty much null and void what you're showing me here.
Yeah, which is just really
to even invest in this. Why would you do that? That's like investing in the rotary telephone when iPhone came out. That's the exact same equivalent, that a coup occurred right then in tech. It's the most mind-blowing thing that you've ever seen in tech. That is the rotary phone, what you're talking about, Stargate. What China released for free, the free version and the Pro version of the upgrades, is the iPhone. It's so mind-bendingly difficult to understand. Scales on the enterprise edition, it's 50 times cheaper to run. So,
well, what are they going to do? Are they going to try and buy that AI system from China, like they're trying to buy TikTok?
I'm not.
Listen, you're going to have to shut that down, or you got to sell it to an American company, or you're gone, bud.
As of yesterday, China said you can only register to use their new system with a Chinese mobile phone number. So if you were lucky enough in the first 3 days to get registered outside China, you're in like Flint there. But from today, they cut everybody off and only Chinese mobile phone numbers registered.
I just think it's so interesting with just the name Stargate Project. Because that was a real government program that was using psychics and remote viewers to collect intelligence data on foreign assets. And now, when you type into Google Project Stargate or Stargate Project, all you get is a Wikipedia article and a bunch of articles about this Stargate Project AI. And I just had Dale Graff, which was
the movie as well.
Yeah, exactly. And they even said in the Wikipedia Stargate Project Stargate for this AI that it's based off of the 1994 Stargate movie. It's wild. Yeah. It's so crazy. Here, I'll show you really quickly.
I love that movie. That's one of my favorite movies. I really believe that exists. That technology, I do believe, is true.
So the Stargate Project.
We actually have that, and that's the reason we went to war in a lot of places, to try to capture that data, capture that device, whatever it was. We scoured the planet, starting war after war, in some of the oldest places on the planet to try to capture that old technology. And a lot of our military bases, believe it or not, are on top of these ancient sites. And they were just in there digging away for how many years? 15 years? Right on top of some of the oldest relic areas on the planet. There's some truth to this stuff.
So
You might think
this
it's science
is
fiction, but it's the reality we live in.
this is what you get when you type in the Stargate project into Google now. But it didn't used to be like this just a couple of weeks ago. When you typed in the Stargate project into Google, you would get a Wikipedia article saying that the Stargate project was a remote viewing unit by Army intelligence and the DIA. But now it's nothing but this AI stuff.
Well, Ryder, I got to jump off right now, but I will say adios to everybody. Happy New Year of the Snake, and I'll catch you on the next show.
Thanks, David. Appreciate your time. Chat
for now.
soon. Thanks for being here, everyone. Really appreciate you guys. Thanks, everyone in the chat. Please be sure to hit the thumbs up button to help the channel and the algorithm. Share, subscribe, hit the bell icon as well for notifications, and leave a comment under the video. Appreciate everyone being here, and we will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.